Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar. It's lovely to see a number of people on today, and I suppose today is really about me serving you in terms of how you can improve your coaching questions. For those of you who haven't met me before, my name is Danette Fenton-Menzies and I'm the Director of Learning at Magical Learning. And we do every month a webinar on a different topic that we think will help people out there in the world. So I hope you find today's session really good, and I'd love for you to bring questions that have worked for you, and also situations today that might be happening in your life where you think coaching might be helpful, both at work and at home. Let's get started. And here we go. What we're going to cover today, and then I'm going to get you to put in the chat box what you are also hoping to get out of today. So first of all, we're going to look at what is actually coaching and how is it relevant to what you do, to your life, I suppose. How you can help coaching at work as well to build your team up. One of the things we teach a lot about is leadership, and one of the key roles of leaders is to be leader as a coach for their people. And we'll talk about why that's so important in this day and age. We're going to look at the power of asking great coaching questions, as well as some simple things you can do to develop your coaching questions as you move forward to help yourself and also to help your team. So I'm interested in why you're on today's call, and it might be just to learn some more skills. If you find the annotation toolbar on my screen that's on the top, you'll see there's a tab that says more, and if you click on that, there's a chat function, and I'm going to write hello so you can see that, hopefully. I'd love for you to put in there what you were hoping to get out of today's webinar, because this really is an interactive webinar. Excellent, I love that. Thank you, Allegra. Some coaching questions that will help you get to the next level in your career. Fabulous. And I suppose that's where leadership comes in, isn't it? Because it helps us move, but it also helps our people grow as well. So it's a fabulous thing to do. Robin Sharma is my business coach, and one of my most favourite phrases that he uses is, with better awareness comes better choices, and then with better choices comes better results. One of the lovely things that coaching allows us to do is to help raise our people's awareness, and through doing that it helps them to make better choices and obviously then get better results. And we were with Robin this last weekend, so we were just over in Toronto and came back yesterday, and surprisingly not jet lagged, so I'm feeling pretty pleased at the moment about that. All right, one of the things as a coach that I like to do is help reframe change for my people. One of the most important things is our brain is designed to resist change because it requires more bandwidth of our brain when we actually do start to change. So it's recognising that our change will be uncomfortable. If you ask a good coaching question, the person will probably look back at you, so a team member might look back at you and go, oh, that's a great question. I've never thought of that before. And that's a really great opportunity for them to get a little bit uncomfortable and then obviously to grow as well. So this is why I think practicing great questions, particularly from a coaching perspective, assist us, but also our team members to continue to grow and develop themselves. And in this rapidly changing world, that's a really important thing to be able to do for our people. So what is coaching? Coaching, from my perspective, is a process of equipping our people with tools. So one of the things I'll often share with my clients, and I've been doing coaching for 20 plus years now, is tools that can help them move to the next level. Also that knowledge through the awareness, through the questions, and providing them opportunities that they need to become more or fully effective. I like to say, as a coach, I'm the person's cheerleader. I'm by their side, helping them to get to where they want to be. And that's both personally and also professionally. I coach a number of CEOs of global organisations, and one of the benefits they have or they get from coaching and they share with me is I never tell them what to do, because if I do that, I'm being an advisor, I'm not being a coach. What I do, however, is ask lots of questions to provide them with more insight so they can make different decisions to move forward. Obviously, I'll provide them with tools, and it's then up to them to apply those tools. If you're coaching someone and you walk away from that session exhausted and with work to do, then you'll probably find that actually you're not coaching, you're more likely advising them rather than coaching them. So just be aware that really our role as a coach is to ask questions to support that person to move forward. One of the things I see with coaching is that it helps you to build your team in a number of ways. Because as we ask great questions, we empower people to come up with their own solutions. If you're working in a team, perhaps who aren't finding their own solutions, perhaps reflect, am I telling them what to do rather than perhaps asking them questions which allow them to come up with their own solutions? Because the wonderful thing is when a person comes up with their own solutions, they will generally own those solutions and move forward and be accountable for those particular solutions. What I've noticed with people who are told what to do is if it doesn't work, it's really easy for them to say, well, that wasn't my idea in the first place. Danette told me to do that. Therefore, Danette doesn't know what she's talking about. It is much harder for a person to use that type of excuse if they've come up with their own solution. And it's one of the big things, you know, in the 20 odd years that I've been coaching, that I've noticed that if I start to tell someone it doesn't work, and I actually recognize that now, I'll often say to my clients when they're really stuck, do you want me to take my coaching hat off and put my advising hat on? And I'll only do that for a minute or two, and then I'll take my advising hat and I'll demonstrate it by doing exactly what I've just done on the video. And then I'm putting my coaching hat back on, and then I'll ask questions. So how could you apply this idea to you know, where you're moving towards? Like, oh, okay, now I've got an idea. I could do this, I could do this. Okay, which one of those resonates for you? This one. On a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to implementing that particular solution? And that's a really good coaching question, because when you ask on a scale of 1 to 10, if they come back with anything below an 8, all right, what would you need to get up to an 8, 9 or 10 so that you are committed to implementing this moving forward? And that stops those excuses longer term as well. And also highlights if they're perhaps not entirely across what it is they need to do. So again, great questions. The other lovely thing is, as you do this, you empower and teach your team to build their own coaching skills. And if we think about leadership nowadays, it used to be based on your level in an organisation. Leadership nowadays is much more about you growing more leaders. It's about your attitude. So the lovely thing is, as you coach people, teach them to grow through questions, you're automatically teaching them those skill sets as well. And that creates then more people who are leaders in your team, which is awesome. That empowers everyone in a team, which I love. So again, you know, I love, if you've been on any of my webinars, you'll know I love quotes. I absolutely believe that people, unless coached, never reach their maximum capabilities. This is Bob Nardelli, and he was a great coach. And it's so true. From what I see, even people at the top of their game, if you look at the elite athletes, all of those that have managed to maintain their elite level, if you look behind them, there'll be one or many coaches to support their continued growth, because it's really easy when you're at the top of your game to coast, because you go, well, you know, I'm at the top of my game, I'm the best in the world. The problem is that can also be, if you then have that mindset about, well, you know, I'm the best in the world, so why do I need to do any more? You tend to find you lose that level of world class pretty quickly. So if you look at the people who've sustained their world-class position, very rare you wouldn't find someone that's got one or more coaches to just continue to encourage them to grow and develop, because there's always areas for us to grow and develop in. Some of the things that I see, particularly around teaching our people to coach more, is that with those great coaching questions, it allows people to problem solve really difficult situations. So we're equipping them to be able to handle those difficult difficult situations much better. And to give you an example, and this is why I love getting coached as well, and I have my own business coach. I remember a couple of years ago, our business went through a really bad time because one of our businesses that we partnered with went belly up just before Christmas. And that was a real opportunity to ask much better questions, to take our business to the next level. And when they went belly up, because my coach had consistently told us, when things look bad, ask a better question. And one of his great questions, and this is Robin Sharma, is what's the opportunity here? So when that happened and it impacted us from a cash flow perspective, etc., by asking what's the opportunity here, we were able to move our brain from just focusing on all the bad things that were happening to looking for what possibilities are out there that we previously missed. And that allowed us to not only get back to where we were previously, but now we're in that growth phase and we'll continue to do that just through a really simple question. What's the opportunity here? Practice that question. I really encourage you. It's an incredible question because what it does is when everyone else is focused on the issue, which is what our brain wants to do, when you ask that question, it literally opens your brain up to see more possibilities around you and you will come up with much better solutions. So I highly encourage that, whether it's at work or whether it's personally. The other thing, obviously, when we ask great questions, it actually helps people grow their own skills because they think up new solutions which give them more tools in their toolkit when things aren't working because they've been able to identify better solutions to move forward. The other thing is by asking great questions, you can actually help people understand their team members' different perspectives. Now, this is why we talk about diversity being so important in a workplace. Allowing us to understand those different perspectives allows us to honour the diversity in our team. And when we honour that diversity in our team, it's incredible what we get out of our people. I recently have been working with a group where some of the team members are not open to the diversity of people's skills that they bring to the workplace. And in the worst case, that creates people feeling like they're isolated, which we then don't get the best out of our people. And in some instances, people feeling like they're being, because they're isolated, they feel bullied, they don't bring their best self to work. In fact, they are looking consciously to find new jobs. And this is why being able to teach people to coach, to grow, to be able to understand those different perspectives creates an amazing workplace. I love helping people grow, and that's what I see so much with coaching. Some of my clients I coach weekly and they're CEOs, and I'm there because I'm the person that will tell them, okay, let's reflect on this. And when something doesn't work, rather than seeing that as a failure, we look at, okay, what can we learn from this? How can we learn and grow from this to move forward and use this as a lesson to take our level to the next level? The other lovely thing about coaching questions is that it can help a person become more self-aware. We all have what I call blind spots, and you'll see me sort of doing this. Our blind spot are things we can't see, but those around us can. And our blind spots stop us from being the best leader that we possibly can. And for me, having those blind spots opened up, and usually it hurts when someone raises a blind spot, and I can say this personally, having had that. However, once that, I've processed that hurt, it's like, wow, gee, now I've got a whole stack of other opportunities that I missed before because of that blind spot. There were things I wasn't valuing in other people in other situations. And the other thing is, if we do great coaching questions, we can empower people to have a better life. This morning and over the last weekend when I was in Toronto at a conference with Robin, one of the lovely things that he shared with us was that in order to take ourselves to the next level, we actually have to, and not this actual word, but kill our old self. And he doesn't mean literally kill our old self. It's that old self needs to die in order for us to have a new attitude, a new way of asking questions, a new way of being. And by doing that through coaching and empowering our people, we take them to that next level where they're a whole new person because they've continuously developed themselves. And I'm curious, have any of you been coached before, and how did you find coaching? Did it have this type of impact? So in the chat box, please, I'd love for you to share. And while you do that, I'm just going to have a quick drink of water. One of the reasons we now know that questions are really empowering is that one of the critical things that we use to motivate our people is, if I have a sense of autonomy, I'm far more likely to bring my whole self to the workplace. The wonderful thing about questions are that we give our people autonomy. So we guide them through the actual questions we ask. We also give them back autonomy, which increases their ability to engage, to be motivated in the workplace. That's very different to telling someone what to do. The moment we tell someone what to do, unless it's in the point of actually teaching them a new skill, but once we've taught them that, we need to hand it over to them so that they do it in a way that allows them to have some autonomy. If you just keep telling someone what to do, you take away that autonomy. And what we then see is people disengage. There's a lovely TED video by Dan Pink, and Dan Pink's written a number of books where he talks about 3 key motivators of people, and they're not money. It's around purpose, autonomy, and mastery. So when we empower our people on the purpose that aligns with their personal purpose, so our team's purpose aligns with their personal purpose, we give them autonomy and we allow them to continue to grow to get mastery, then that's basically like rocket fuel for our people. A lot of workplaces still don't do that. A lot of workplaces see their people just as widgets, really, and they tell them what to do. They're not interested in their team's opinions, etc. And I know that's not you because you're actually on this call coaching. But I'm sure you've worked in workplaces where your views, your insights have not been valued, and that tends to be really demotivating. So let's go on to now some skills around coaching and how we can grow our coaching. So one of the things I always say is study the greats. So in this case, if you've got a favourite leader or a couple of favourite leaders, you may not be able to speak to them directly, but you can certainly watch videos about them. You can read books. You can listen to podcasts if they've been on podcasts. The idea is to look at the types of questions they ask and then think about, how can I apply that with myself and particularly with my team? So what I did before this call was just Google great leadership questions, and I found a really interesting article in Forbes. And the article is called, and we'll send this out to you with the link of the recording, 16 Powerful Questions Coaches Ask Their Clients to Help Them Achieve Their Goals. And I wrote all of these down because I thought it would be nice to share with you. And again, you'll get this link, so you don't need to write these down. So the first question they had was, what's standing in your way? And that's a really great question because it makes people aware of what are the things that I see as the blockages for me going to the next level. And again, with better awareness about those blockages, they can make better choices to get around those blockages and have better outcomes. Second one, when your team member is explaining a situation, if you're not sure that you're fully across it, you can ask, tell me more, or can you tell me more? And notice the language in both of those. What's standing in your way? No judgment there. What can you tell me more? They're really neutral language questions. They're designed to be curious and to elicit more information from the person you're coaching. Third question, what will happen if you don't take this step? Now, that's a great one to help the person become aware of, wow, if I don't do this, what's the short and the long-term impact of that? So again, that can be motivating for people. What does success look like? Often people don't know that. It's actually really good because that then gives them the ability to head towards a known target. I like that one. I ask that one quite a lot. Fifth one, what are your 5 whys? What we find is when you ask a question, why do you want this? The first maybe 2 or 3 answers are more from our conscious. When we ask the 4th or the 5th one, they tend to come from our subconscious. And sometimes the why, for example, Allegra and I were having a conversation about sometimes people end up in a career not because it was their first choice, but because it was their parents' first choice. And when you get to the fourth or fifth, you might find the person saying, well, actually, the reason I want this, maybe I don't want it. Maybe it's my parents wanted this for me. And that awareness allows them then potentially to make a very different choice about why they're doing something. And maybe they should actually stop doing something. So I really like that question. What are you most proud of? Really important to celebrate what you've achieved. What do you want? Again, getting that clarity about what people want and need. I love this one too. And this, if you've got team members who sometimes just come looking for you to have the answers, what have you done to try to solve the problem? Again, for them to list what perhaps hasn't worked so well, to give them the opportunity to identify some more areas to work on. I like this question too. What are you doing to not achieve your goal? So sometimes we put our own roadblocks in place, and this question allows us to elicit what those potential things are that we're doing that's actually perhaps sabotaging our attempt to fix that particular problem. And again, great insight, because then we can start to make those sabotaging mechanisms more conscious and again deal with them. What about this one? If your main obstacle didn't exist, how would your life look like? Great question. What do you need most right now? Another great question. And again, for a coach, that allows us to really help stay focused on what's most important. Usually when I start a coaching session, I'll say to the coachee, what's the most important thing that we can work on today to help move you forward? And then they bring that to the session, and we make sure that we focus on that throughout the session. What about this one? What will things look like after you've been successful? Again, helping them to identify how much better it will be once they implement the things they need to implement. I love this one too. What is the most important thing to you in the world at the moment, and why? Again, great awareness. What's important about that to you? A great question, the 15th one, so what? So that's checking in that, does this matter? Is that excuse right? Is this really what you want to do? And if they come up with an excuse, well, why not? Why can't you do that? And again, exploring those excuses. We often say, and if you watch great leaders, one of the things great leaders do is they use great language and they use very little excuses. As a coach, I get really interested in the stories that people make up about why they can't do things. Our stories create our reality. So as a coach, we can raise people's awareness about how their stories might be disempowering them rather than empowering them. And again, I'd encourage you just to listen to your people's language. Does that story sound like it's going to empower them? And if it doesn't, reflecting that through your questions in order to help them create new stories that do empower them. One of the other things that I've seen great leaders and great coaches do is, when they're using questions, is to use the language of the coachee. And I'll give you two examples here. So I do a lot with accountants, because that's what I trained in originally. And so when I'm asking an accountant what success might look like, I would use something like, so what would be your bottom line? Because that's an accounting terminology. If I was, say, dealing with a doctor, I might say something like, what's your diagnosis of this? What would be your prescription? And you notice that I'm using their language in the questions. I once sat in on a coaching session where I was listening to a trainee coach another trainee coach. And we had to bring real life situations where we'd been stuck for a long time. And in this instance, the coachee had been stuck for 16 years on a really difficult problem that they had simply not been able to solve. Anyway, when they were explaining in the 5 minutes they had to explain their particular situation, the trainee coach picked up that the person liked hunting. So that was part of their background. And what I saw in that coaching, or listened to in that coaching session, was incredible. By the use of about 4 questions, the trainee coach took the other person from completely stuck to empower, and they had a way mapped out moving forward. And they did that by using questions that were around hunting. So they asked, what's your target for this to be successful? What would a bullseye look like if you solved this problem? And literally through those and 2 other questions, they solved that situation for that person, or that person actually solved their own through those questions. And they went away fully empowered to do something different. That's an incredible gift, isn't it, to be able to do that? Some other ones that I like to use is to check in on people's language. So if someone says, I don't feel that my supervisor respects me, I know that respect is a trigger word, and so I know there'll be a lot of emotion around that. And one of the things I like to help people when they use trigger words is for them to actually explain what that word means for them. So I'll say, when you use the word respect, what does that actually mean for you? Can you tell me, and depending on the person, what respect looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like, depending on their modality. And often they'll go, well, it looks like respect. And I go, okay, what are the things that would demonstrate that a person was respecting you? What would that look like? And then they start to name the behaviours that they're looking for. Now, that's great awareness for that person, because then they can go and talk to the other person and say, I'm not feeling respected because these are some of the behaviours I'm looking for. And the other person might go, oh my goodness, no, I've been showing you respect through these particular mechanisms. So that even that understanding that we all think respect is shown in the same manner amongst us, and we think it's the way we demonstrate it, but I can guarantee if you triggered around respect with another person, their method of showing respect is just different to yours. So asking that question, being able to elicit, what does respect look like for me? Same with appreciation. See this a lot at home, and I'm sure this has never happened to anyone except for me. But if you go home and maybe you've had a bad day and you're feeling a bit frustrated, and maybe there's clothes on the floor, or maybe the toothpaste has been squeezed the wrong way, or there's the toilet seat's up or down, we then go into this whole story about, oh my goodness, that person doesn't respect me. But that's my definition of respect. And really underneath it, I'm thinking, you haven't fixed the toothpaste. Why did you do it that way? And really it's actually about me not feeling respected and me not asking for respect to be shown in particular ways. And when we learn to do that, we calm down and we can actually really, in a nice way, ask to be appreciated, respected, which is the trigger for most conflict at home and often at work as well. So in a team, actually getting your team to share with the whole team, what does respect look like for each team member? What does appreciation look like for each team member? Otherwise, we can feel like we're appreciating our people or respecting our people, but they might actually tell us the opposite. And here I'll give you another example. I had a team where the boss, one of the ways that they wanted to show their team that they were appreciated was at Easter time, they said to their team, you know what, you've been working so hard, go home early. Now, one of the people was really a rules-based person. And so when the boss said go home early, that actually triggered a threat response in that team member, because the team member knew that that boss actually didn't have the authority to let people go early. And so instead of rewarding that person, they created a massive stress response. Now, had they had that conversation in the workplace about, well, what does appreciation look like for you? They would have got a different response from that person and been able to understand, wow, if I do it that way, maybe that's not going to help that person feel appreciated. So again, just another good thing about asking questions. One of the things I'd really encourage you to do, the moment you hear or see a great coaching question, write them down. And as I said, we'll send you this list so you'll have these to start with. And this is why I always encourage people. You'll notice I always carry, so this is my current journal that I write things down in. I'm always encouraging people to carry a journal with them so that they can write down great questions. If you don't carry a journal with you, probably the only time I'd encourage you to use your phone, use the notes part or a part of it where you can actually record those great questions. If you're more auditory, I just encourage you to use the dictaphone part and just, say those questions so you've got a copy of them. Again, some great questions that you could be using. One that I love, when a person's a bit stuck, I say, what else? And if they say, I really don't know, I'd say, well, imagine you did know. what else could be another option? And the word imagine, or the words imagine if, shift our brain to the more creative side. So when you're asking that of another person, it shifts the side of the brain from the logical to the more creative and empowers them to come up with different alternatives. A really lovely one that we use sometimes in a workshop, and you can't see my arms, but what I'd love for all of you to do at the moment is just cross your arms the normal way that you cross your arms. And then what you would normally do is get the person to do this, so cross their arms their normal way, and get them to state what their issue is while their arms are crossed normal way. So they might say, I'm stuck on this particular problem on how to move forward. And then what you do is you say to them, okay, I want you to cross your arms the opposite way. Now just try that yourself. Feels really weird the first time because change is uncomfortable, but it equals your growth. And then you, with their arms crossed the opposite way to normal, you ask them, okay, so what are some solutions to that problem? What else could you do? And you just let them start to rattle off their different answers. And what you'll find is, you just keep saying, what else, what else, what else, while they've got their arms crossed the opposite way, and just write it down for them. So on a whiteboard or on butcher's paper. And what you'll notice is you continue to ask what else, they'll actually come up with their own answer. So simply changing the way people hold their arms or cross their arms and then asking that question, what else, amazingly incredible about how much they will be able to solve that particular situation themselves. So what else is a great question. Some other ones, as I said, Robin always asks us, what's the opportunity here? And I've written some of these down because I wanted to share them. I love this one too. How can you become wiser? Really great question for people, for all of us to reflect. Tony Robbins, who does a lot of coaching, and some of you may have heard of Tony, some of his are, what's great about your life this week? Really granular. What's going on that makes this week great? What did you accomplish this week? Again, great for looking at, did I accomplish what I wanted to? Or did I get distracted? And if I got distracted, what are my distractions? And how have you grown this week? Imagine just asking yourself those questions every week. Another 3 questions we ask all the time is, what should I keep doing because it's working? What should I start doing because I haven't done it and I need to try? And also, what should I stop doing? That's a really good question to reflect on, because sometimes in order to get to our next level of growth, we need to stop doing things, particularly in a work team. If you're doing something because you're really good at it, perhaps it's time to delegate that so that you can move to the next level. And again, because it's comfortable, we tend to want to do it. And a lot of people will say, I don't have time to delegate that to teach the person. But in fact, you don't have time not to if you want to go to that next level. So what should I stop doing? And a really great tool that Robin Sharma taught me about was start creating, instead of a to-do list, also do a stop doing list. Really powerful to stop doing particular things, again, to move to that next level. If it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. That's why I love coaching. Another thing that we can do is absolutely seek feedback and reflect about how we can improve our coaching skills, particularly our questioning skills. After each coaching session that I do, I reflect, I get my journal out and I reflect and I look at what should I keep doing because it worked in the session. What do I need to stop doing because perhaps that question didn't work in this particular session? And also, what do I need to start doing? They're beautiful ways of continuously improving our skills. And something that I think is really important, to get to mastery, which as a leader, mastery is going to take you about 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. And that deliberate practice is getting feedback to continuously improve what you do. And it's why I love being a professional coach, because as a professional coach, I need to also be coached in order to have that deliberate practice as part of my coaching skills. So I encourage everyone to continuously practice. Start small if you're just starting out doing coaching. And as you grow, work with people who push you so that you feel uncomfortable when you're coaching, because that means you're growing as well. Now, another beautiful question you can ask, and this can be in coaching, it is also a great question to ask if you want perhaps a hotel or a flight upgrade. Love this wording. And again, we'll share this wording with you. Would it be possible? It's a really beautiful way of using language to grow. Now, a tool that you can use for the practice part is the GROW model. And again, I'd encourage you to Google the GROW model. We will send you a link around GROW model. And this is a coaching model that basically GROW stands for goal. So we first of all explore the goal with the coachee. Then we look at what's their current reality. So R stands for reality. What do they see as why they are where they are? Then we look at O stands for options. So we get them to come up with different options about how they move forward to get closer to their goal. And again, we would use what else a number of times in this particular part of that model. And then the W stands for way forward. What do they need to do in order to implement those particular steps? So it's a really great model. And it's certainly one that when I first started coaching out, I used a lot. And then over time, I suppose I've become more fluid because I've practiced coaching for 20 plus years. It's become easier. And I have a whole stack of questions in my question list that I use depending on the situation, because I know that they've worked time and again, which is really helpful. So 4 simple things that you can do. Let's just go back over them to make sure they're embedded. First of all, I encourage you to study those great leaders and look at their coaching questions. And once you've identified the great coaching questions they've asked, absolutely record them so that you've got them as part of your toolkit. Always, after you've coached, spend time reflecting. And I would say spend time reflecting in every day anyway. What can I keep doing, start doing, and stop doing? And finally, the best way to become a great coach is to practice and get feedback around your practice. I love this. Nobody who ever gave his or her best ever regretted it. I had to write his because that's what George said, but I've added her because it's both male and female. I'm curious now, and that's also a lovely phrase for a coach. I'm curious, what are you going to work on in terms of your coaching skills, particularly around questions as you move forward? So I'd love for you to share in the chat box what you're going to be working on. One of the things, and while you're thinking about that, one of the things that I learned or refreshed my learning on over the weekend in Toronto was a concept that our coach shares with us, which is the $1 million weekend. And that's about going away and asking yourself questions about how could you create $1 million business, and you spend a weekend in isolation doing that. And throughout that weekend, you're constantly asking yourself, how do I create $1 million, say, in the next 12 months? And when you start asking yourself that question, which is a really powerful question, you come up with all sorts of options. So there's just a simple question to ask that can take your life to a whole other level. So Allegra's asked here, questions that open up the other side of the brain for different thought patterns. And that's a great one. Thank you, Allegra. One thing I'd love to share with you, and is to check in, is there any other questions before we finish up? Because I always love to check in if we can help you in any way. And the other thing I'd say is that we are going to be running our next webinar next month, but please follow us on social media, because we love, if you've ever got any questions, you can always ask us during the month through social media. But our next webinar will be on the 18th of July at 10 a.m, same time. And we're going to be looking at how do you build world-class teams. So that'll be continuing on from this coaching theme. Love to see you there. Please feel free, if you think our link would be helpful to others, to share it. You will receive a copy of the recording of today's webinar. For those who weren't able to be here in person, please feel free to contact us if you're listening to the recording and you've got any questions. And I hope to see you all next month. Really appreciate you being on the webinar. And until then, have an awesome rest of the month. All right, take care.